Hey, what's going on, everybody? We're back with today's question. This one says, hey, Vinny, what suggestions do you have for improving a pre-talk? I'm having to see clients 4, 5, 6, sometimes more sessions because they aren't going into hypnosis deeply enough to make changes, and it just feels like something's missing. What do you suggest? Okay, so this is actually this is a pretty important question. I love this. Yeah, 4, 5, 6 sessions, sometimes more. That's actually pretty normal from most of the studies I've seen, right? That's kind of the expectation, which is still way faster than any other modality that I'm aware of. So I would really like to just say, hey, give yourself a break. Sounds like you're doing good, right? There's always that outlier, one session miracle thing that I would have that with traditional approaches. Sometimes it was pretty cool. But in terms of like improving the pre-talk, this might kind of surprise you. I haven't used a pre-talk in years. It's been a long time. Tons of clients. I have not used a pre-talk. And if you think about it, here's why, right? Like I'll give you a little bit more of the context for this, and then we can explore maybe some of the theoretical stuff behind it. And hopefully that helps you here. For me, I would have a client in front of me, and when I was doing a pre-talk, a lot of times it felt like I was sort of ignoring them. Right? I remember actually getting frustrated because I have this long pre-talk I want to get through with somebody. They keep interrupting me, asking questions, sharing their experience. At the time, I was like, oh gosh, what are you doing? We got to get through the pre-talk. I'm trying to help you, So that was a little clunky and felt a bit like you're doing all this work to build rapport, then you're basically having someone sit there and you're kind of engaging them with some leading questions, and you're doing some clever things to try to shift beliefs and all that. But it's like, man, like it really felt, I didn't like that part of it, just to be frank. Then in second sessions, third sessions, kind of what you're describing here, a lot of times what I noticed was all the things that person would talk about. Let's say it was smoking cessation, because that's primarily what I did. All the things they had to talk about had literally nothing to do with a cigarette. Right? The reasons that they felt like they wanted to smoke cigarettes had nothing to do with it. It would be like, one example, I think I've talked about this before. I had basically someone told me the day after a session they're really, really struggling, and I just got inquisitive to learn a little bit more about what was going on. And because I figured, well, none of that stuff worked, right? So let's see what we can come up with here. And she said something along the lines of her daughter had said something nasty about her on social media, and she felt very embarrassed, and it hurt her feelings because you can imagine what that's like, right? You're a parent, you're raising this kid, you just want the best for them, and they say something like that, and you can see where that would really pull at somebody. And so what we did was just kind of talk about that. We just kind of explored it, and it was incredible, right? And she had all these like spontaneous insights about herself, about her relationship with her daughter, etc. And it's really an incredible thing. So then she didn't smoke again. I got like a really cool update. I saw that she's running a marathon, raising money for a children's hospital. So now this isn't anecdotal. Now, and I didn't immediately depart from pre-talks at that point. I still tried to work in a more traditional way, but I would kind of use this type of approach in a second session if I needed to. And then after a while, it's like, then if all of these people in a second session are telling you like, yeah, it's not about the cigarette, it's about something else entirely that's bothering me. Well, why? If we really believe that the presenting problem is the presenting problem, and if we really believe it's not the real problem, why wouldn't we just start to work on that stuff? Why wouldn't we work on the real problem? And that's sort of where I just kind of departed from that. There's similar stuff along the way, but I don't want to bore you with all the stories. But I think theoretically, that's it, right? That's the more theoretical side of this, is like, if the entire pre-talk is set up around trying to convince them to shift their beliefs around certain symptoms, like different features of the symptom or different experiences with the symptom, like, so be a little bit more clear. They want to quit smoking, and you're basically trying to maybe get them to shift from feeling a certain way about this being an addiction versus a habit, right? Or trying to convince them that they really don't want to smoke, or trying to convince them, all the different things you do in a typical pre-talk. That's great, right, for shifting those beliefs and really giving them an opportunity to consider it differently. But again, if that's the real problem, or if that's just the presenting problem, then it's like there's still this real problem over here, which I would rather just work with. And then it's like it's almost like they just don't care about the symptom. Like I don't really want to smoke anymore. It just doesn't have the same impact on them that it used to. And I think it's a very fascinating way to work with folks. And what's really cool about this approach is like a side benefit. It's like you think you're going to do a stop smoking session, but you wind up exploring someone's entire, helping them navigate their internal reality in such a way that they learn a tremendous amount of things about themselves, about that problem. It's, you can imagine what would happen to someone after, an hour of that, 30 minutes, 45 minutes of that. It's like they look at themselves differently. They show up differently in life. It's really cool, right? So this is sort of how I approach it. It's a little bit more of a dynamic process, and it's really simple and easy and fun. But here's the thing. So I can't give you like specific advice on how to improve a pre-talk. I think, just practice and learning more about it, that would be the way to do it. But maybe try not using one, right? See what happens. But here's the thing: the way I'm working with folks in terms of like hypnotic phenomena, I'm not really trying to create any of that. I don't even care if it happens, right? It does all the time. But I'm convinced it's because I don't care, and I'm really just creating a space for that client to explore. And as they do, just phenomena just happens, right? Eye closure. If you've seen any of my demos, it's this stuff just happens, right? Spontaneous regressions. I like that approach because it's like it's not happening in relation to a symptom, right? It's because we're exploring what's really going on inside. So I feel like this is just a super fun way to work. And so if you can develop the ability to catch trance versus trying to create it, and then I think then you could just kind of let go a lot of all. It would make sense, right? If you don't have to create trance, then there's all that time you're spending trying to set someone up for, like, I'm going to do an induction now, right? Like, I don't even use those. So if you can just learn to catch it as it happens organically, you're going to save a ton of time, right? Save time in that specific session. Then as you get really, really good at it, your session time goes way down. But on top of that, there's fewer like multiple session situations with a client. And that's just because we've tackled the real problem, right? So I don't know what niche you're in, but let's say someone works with you and they're still having problems after the session, right? Maybe they're just feeling a certain way they don't like, there's some discomfort. One of the things I teach my hypnotists is like, well, that could be a very organic thing that's occurring. That could very well be the way that client's unconscious mind is helping them shift their reality, learn things about themselves. So I actually teach my hypnotists, like, okay, we need to instruct that client to honor those feelings. And it's incredible. This is so valuable for people. Like, I've had people still smoke after a session, right? And I always tell them the most important work happens afterward. The most important work happens afterward. This is where the changes integrate, right? And it's incredible. And then those same people, I've had 4 months later, I think one lady just wrote this amazing thing on TikTok about the experience she had with me. She said it was perfect. It was so easy, so simple, best, all these cool superlatives and all that. So and this is a fairly common thing, right? It's because we're letting those changes that we had happened organically integrate fully, which means like you don't want to see that person until they're done processing those changes, right? You don't want to interrupt it because that person has to quit smoking. That person has to make different choices and decisions. You cannot do it for them. I think this is another really important point here. Like if you're pre-talking somebody, which is that, like I have a friend that we always make jokes about, like before talk. Like, I'm going to before talk you. That doesn't make sense. But you're delivering this like pre-talk. You're sort of setting the parameters and expectations that your protocol and that the experience you're having with that person is going to create the shift. And it can, right? I've had success with those traditional approaches. I really have. I know a lot of people that have. The drawback there is that what we want to do is maximally empower that client, We want to maximally empower that client. And so if they're relying on your methodology, that's not them relying on themselves. And what we want to do is create the space for that client in a session to access the resources they need and integrate those to solve the real problem. Okay, so this is quite a bit of a different way of thinking. Now I know folks that work traditional, they might think like, okay, well, my protocol is supposed to create that type of an experience for them. But like, we know every client's different. We know people go into trance differently. There's that old cliche, you ask 100 hypnotists about what hypnosis is, they'll give you 100 different answers, maybe more. We can't even agree on what the thing is, right? So there's always like different working definitions going on. Why on earth would we expect that the techniques we're using are going to do the trick? I'm not saying they won't, but like if you're trying to really reduce down the number of sessions, time in session, I think it might make a little bit more sense. Why don't we just let that client's unconscious mind let us know what it needs, and then we'll just do that, right? So what we're really doing is we're taking the guesswork out of change work. So this video went on a lot longer than what I meant for it to. I hope it was helpful though. And I can't wait to hear from y'all. Please keep the questions coming. These are a blast. Take care, everybody.